First things first, we need to wash all of these strawberries because we picked them from a U-pick field. So there's a little bit of dirt on them. So let's go ahead and wash them. All I did was I just filled up the sink with some water and I'm going to dump them in. I just use water. I don't do anything super crazy or fancy. And I just get them all nice and washed off. Here they are in the sink, all nice and clean. So once I drain them off, what you need to do is take the leaf part off of your strawberries, and then there's like that little hard chunk that's left behind. I'm sure there's a technical name for it, but I'm not here to give technical names. I'm here to make jam. This is the part that I really don't like. So what I do is I take my nail and I kind of dig in and it gets that hard chunk off. I'm sure that you could use like a paring knife or a spoon or something like that, but I find it easier. I just take my nail and then I have a big giant bowl and I plop them all in there. And once we do that, I'll come back and I'll show you the next step. It does go pretty fast once you get in a groove. So you just grab, scoop, and toss. Grab, scoop, and toss. So once you get in the flow, it's not too bad. What I like to do is once my bowl is covered with a nice layer of strawberries, I take a potato masher and I crush them up, and what I'm going to do is actually toss that into an empty crock pot. I don't do this once all of the strawberries are done because then it gets a little too chunky. So you can see I still have some strawberries left here in the sink. So I'll stop probably 2 to 3 times, crush a batch, and put it in my other container. You can see this part here is super satisfying. So you just crush them up until it's a nice jam consistency. And it's really fun. And this is my favorite part. And this is what it looks like once it's done. So you will take that and you'll dump it into your next container. All of the strawberries have been crushed and I put them in my crock pot. What I'm actually going to do is stick this in the fridge overnight. You do not have to do that, but the kids have dentist appointments today and then we have a t-ball game tonight, so I'm not gonna have a chance to can it. So if you want to can these immediately, just go ahead and do that, and I'll show you in the rest of this video. But for now, I'm sticking this in the fridge overnight, and I'll see you tomorrow whenever we're going to can. Hey, we're back. It's tomorrow and we are ready to start making the jam. Once we make the jam, then I'll show you how to can it. So the recipe, it calls for 6 cups of strawberries to 4 cups of sugar and 1 box of pectin. Now, depending on how many strawberries you have, you can adjust it from there. And don't worry if you're like, wait a second, what did she say? I'm going to have that recipe listed below. With the sugar though, I have had better success with pure cane sugar with everything, you know, gelling up and getting that nice jam. So I'm going to go ahead and divide up the strawberries between my 2 saucepans, and then we'll kind of adjust the recipe from there. But for the most part, it is 6 cups strawberries to 4 cups sugar and then 1 box of pectin. Once you have your strawberries divided, I wound up doing 8 cups of crushed strawberries in each one of my pots here. So what I'm going to do is put in 2 boxes of, I use the Sure Gel for pectin. I like a pretty stiff jam. So what you want to do is you want to add in your pectin to the fruit, and then you're going to stir it around, boil it, then you add your sugar. I have had more success with adding in the pectin first. I've done it the other way around, could not get my jam to set up for the life of me. We wound up using it for a cheesecake topping. So no matter what you make, it still turns out to something good. So you add in your pectin first. So we're going to add that in and bring it to a boil. And there is 1 box of pectin And there is the second box of pectin. And I'm just going to take my spoon and we're going to stir it around. So now you can see what that looks like. Get that all nice and dissolved in there. We're going to let it come to a rolling boil. And what that means is a boil that does not stop even when you are stirring it. So it does take a while. It is optional to add in a half a teaspoon of non-iodized salt. So that's what we do, but it's optional. While you're waiting for that jam to boil, go ahead, stick a plate in the freezer. You're going to need this for a nifty little trick later. Once you want to test if your jam is setting up nice, you'll take a little bit of your jam and spread it across the frozen plate, and then you'll take your finger, run it across. If it stays on each side, it's going to set up beautifully. But if it starts to kind of bleed together, it's not ready yet. So this is a fun little trick. And if you haven't already, go ahead, like, subscribe, follow, share, comment, all of the things. I would really appreciate it. You want to keep stirring it. These are almost to a boil, not quite to a rolling boil. So in the meantime, you can measure out your sugar so then it's ready to just pour in, and you can start getting your jars ready. I like to put mine in the dishwasher, and then it keeps them warm because you do not want to add something super boiling hot to a cold jar, and then you don't want to add cold jars into your boiling water if you are water bath canning this jam. So little tips to stay ahead. This is what it looks like when it is a rolling boil. You see I am stirring it and it is still boiling. This is when you want to add your sugar. I'm going to go ahead and add that sugar in, and this will actually really knock down that boil. And then you're going to want to stir that in and keep an eye on it, because the last thing you want is for your sugar to burn to the bottom of your pot. It is horrible and it is a mess and it is really hard to get off. I know from experience. So you see how that knocked that boil right down. So then you're going to want to bring it to another boil after that. This pot over here is ready. Yep. Oh boy. And that's why I have an apron on, because sometimes it'll come right back out at you. So you want to go ahead, add your sugar in. It knocks that boil down. And you want to stir that sugar around and don't go anywhere because you don't want it to burn. So we're going to get that stirred around and we're going to bring it to another boil. The temperature that they want it to be at is 220. You can use a candy thermometer, and that seems to be a really good temperature range for that jam to set. Or if you don't want to mess with the temperature, let it boil for a while, pull out that frozen plate and go ahead and give it a test. You can do it either way. Like, it's okay. I want you to be successful, but I don't want you to be stressed out either. So going to wait for this to boil and then we'll be back. Now I did eventually get a candy thermometer, so I tried it without, but I wanted to be a little bit more consistent with my results. So right now we are at 210 degrees. You want to be at that 220 mark, so it should be a few more minutes, and then I'll show you how to do the plate test. I've got my plate out of the freezer. I'm going to take a little bit of the jam, spread it along the plate, let it sit for a little bit. We'll see if it's ready. I feel like it might be ready or it might not. Okay, and then you take your finger. All right, it's still kind of sort of bleeding back together, but not quite so. I'm going to let this boil a little bit longer. It's not as set up as I would like it to be. I think it's ready. So let's take some jam out, spread it on our plate, toss that in the sink there. Okay, and then good. It's good. It's staying on its side. So I'm going to get my jars out of the dishwasher and start filling those jars. Now you'll need to get your water bath canner ready. So I'm adding just a little bit more water to mine. A helpful tip is if you take the lid and put the lid on, I find that it comes to a boil a lot faster. I've got my nice warm jars out of the dishwasher. I have one of my pots of jam down in the sink, and then I'm going to go ahead and use my ladle with my funnel here to start filling the jars. Now I do fill them up to right about this line, so that gives you about 1/4 of an inch of head space. So you'll want to go ahead and you'll start doing that. So you just take your jam and you'll start filling those jars. I like that ladle because it hooks on the side of the pot. See? And then they'll look like that. So you'll just go through and you'll start doing all of your jars. So I will be right back once I have those done. The jars are filled and I could not be happier. So out of 16 cups of crushed strawberries, I was able to get 26 of these jam size jars. So do with that information what you will. Next, we need to take a little bit of vinegar. I dip my paper towel in that and I run it around the rim of all of the jars to clean them off and to make sure that you get a good seal, because you did not just do all of that hard work to not have your jars sealed. Now, accidents do happen, things happen, but we are trying to ensure success here, and I want you to be successful. So go ahead, clean off all of those jars, and then I'll come back for the next step. All of your jars are cleaned off. You're going to want to take your lids and start setting those on all of your jars. Once your lids are on, we are going to put the rings around and you screw them on, they call it finger tight. So not like cranking it, but not loosey-goosey. So somewhere in the middle. All of my lids on there, and then I just set a ring on each to help it go a little bit faster. And you go ahead and you screw your lids on finger tight. You see how I didn't crank it, but you see how it wasn't super loosey-goosey. So like I said, somewhere in the middle. So you'll go ahead and you'll get all of your rings tightened, and then we're ready for the water bath. Ooh, we're almost done. Still waiting on my water to boil. Now putting them in, I put them in by hand, but taking them out, I use this cool little tool. Now I did get a canning kit off of Amazon. I do have this kit, it is linked below. I do earn commission. Who's not these days, but this is the best kit that I've found. It came with the pot and it came with all of these cool tools. So in case you need one. My water is finally boiling. I'm going to add my jars in. The processing time is 10 minutes, but you do have to adjust that based on your elevation. I am in central Pennsylvania. I tack on another 5 minutes. So my total processing time would be 15. So I just take my jars and I put them in. There is like a trivet rack kind of thing. I don't know. I don't have the technical names for you. And that's just to show you that if I can do this, anybody can do this. And we're going to see how many we can fit. I think I could squeeze in one more. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So I can do 12 at a time. We're going to drop this down and then process it for 15 minutes. Okay, once your time is up, you'll want to lift your jars out of the water bath, and then you will use your grabber to lift them out, And then I like to set them on a tea towel right over here. And they will need to sit undisturbed for 24 hours. So I'm going to keep taking these out and putting them over here. All right, and then I will drop down my next batch. As I've been putting some of these jars over here on my tea towel, I can already hear them pinging, and let me tell you, that is the sound of success. I love it. And before you know it, you will have a countertop full of your jam jars. I'm going to let these sit for 24 hours. Whenever you store them without the rings in case for some reason the seal would break. You will know. So if you leave the rings on, it could actually unseal and reseal. Very rare, but it could happen, and I want you to avoid that. So you have now just made your own strawberry jam. Only a couple of ingredients. There's no dyes, no preservatives, just the ingredients, and you can be proud that you made this on your own. So I'm proud of you. You should be proud of yourself too. All right, bye.